finger grooves, pressed into wet mortar over 500 years ago. Narrow channels exactly the width of a woman's hand. High on a cliff in the Argeș Valley, Romania, a crumbling section of Poenari Citadel's curtain wall still holds them. Visitors and local surveyors have noted them for decades. Tourists never see them. In 1459, Vlad III Dracula forced hundreds of noble wives to carry limestone blocks up a mountain trail to the fortress summit, barefoot in their Easter silk. They built this wall with their bare hands. The silk never came home. Easter Sunday, 1459. Vlad Dracula invited every boyar family in Wallachia to a feast at his palace in Targovište. 300 families arrived, men, women, children, dressed in their finest vestments, Byzantine silk, gold thread, jeweled brooches pinned at the collarbone, wine flowed for hours. The tables were heavy with roasted meat and honeyed bread. Then Vlad stood from his chair and asked each elder a single question. How many voivodes have you served in your lifetime? Every answer was a confession. Any number above one proved the boyar had survived multiple coups, meaning he had tolerated or orchestrated the assassinations of previous Wallachian rulers, including Vlad's own father, Vlad II Dracula, stabbed to death by boyar conspirators in 1447, including his elder brother Mircea, blinded with hot iron stakes and buried alive in a courtyard in Targovište by the same noble families now seated at the feast table, drinking Vlad's wine. If this is your first time hearing how Vlad turned Easter dinner into a death sentence, subscribe. What happened to the wives hasn't even started. The elderly boyars, who answered 5 or 6, were dragged from the hall and impaled on sharpened wooden stakes lining the road outside the palace. The younger nobles watched their fathers and uncles die on those poles, screaming, sliding. Some took hours. Then Vlad turned to the wives. He did not sentence them to death. He sentenced them to something the German chronicles describe as worse. Back. Every documentary about Vlad the Impaler tells you about impalement, stakes, Ottoman battlefields, the forest of the dead outside Targovište, where 20,000 corpses rotted on wooden poles to greet Sultan Mehmed's advancing army. It's become a brand, the German pamphlets, printed in Lübeck in 1488. The earliest surviving printed accounts of Vlad's reign tell a completely different story about what happened after the Easter feast. The young boyars were not impaled. They were marched, their wives, with their children, 80 kilometers north through mountain forest, from Targovište to the ruins of an abandoned fortress perched on a cliff above the Argeș River. The march took days. The nobles walked in their Easter clothes, the same Byzantine silk and gold-threaded vestments they had worn to the banquet. According to the Kuritsin manuscript, written by a Russian diplomat who visited Vlad's court, by the time the procession arrived at the mountain site, the silk had disintegrated from their bodies. They were naked, bleeding from the feet, skeletal from starvation, and they hadn't reached the punishment yet. The march was the commute. Punishment was the ruin itself. Vlad ordered them to rebuild Poenari Castle. Every wall, every tower, every staircase, with their bare hands. No tools but what they could fashion from the forest. No food but what the soldiers allowed. Here is the question no historian has asked loudly enough. Why did Vlad specifically need the wives? Cut to the base of the cliff. A boyar wife stands staring up at shattered walls rising from the rock face. Her silk is gone. Her hands are raw. The stones are waiting. The forced construction of Poenari. Limestone blocks, 30 to 50 kilograms each. The boyar wives carried them up the mountainside on their backs. They mixed mortar with their bare hands. Quicklime, calcium oxide, a compound that burns through skin on contact, stripping flesh from the fingers and blistering palms raw. The German pamphlets record that the nobles made their own bricks from river clay, hauled up from the Argeș 300 meters below, fired them in kilns they built from scratch, and laid every course of stone themselves. Women who collapsed were stepped over. Vlad's soldiers supervised. They did not lift a single block. Food was rationed to subsistence levels. Water came from the river, straight down the cliff face. A round trip took hours. Later scholarship drawing on the Kuritsin manuscript emphasizes a specific cruelty. Nobles who had been goldsmiths, scribes, silk merchants, the softest hands in the boyar class, were given the heaviest stones. The labor looked calibrated. Vlad did not just want the fortress built. The aristocracy was being physically demolished in the process. The walls rose. The women shrank. As each section was completed, Vlad rode up from Targovište to inspect. He walked the courses. He tested the mortar with his own hands. The fortress had to be perfect. These were noble wives building their own tomb. The walls were half built. Winter was 3 months away. Vlad ordered completion before the first snow. The women were already dying, restored to the walls of Poenari. The finger grooves the viewer saw at the start, catalogued, measured, dismissed by surveyors as construction marks, now carry a different weight. Pull close. The chronicles describe women working in disintegrating silk, their hands pressing wet lime mortar into every joint. If the accounts are accurate, and 3 independent sources say they are, then the fibres of their clothing were ground into the walls by the labour itself. The wall may still be wearing the women's clothes. Vlad did not just punish the boyars, he erased the boyar class by converting their physical bodies into infrastructure. The wives were the primary workforce. And destroying the women destroyed the bloodlines permanently. Kill a boyar lord, and his widow remarries into another noble house. The name survives, the estates transfer, the children inherit, but work his wife to death building your fortress. Force her children to carry stones beside her until they collapse, and the bloodline terminates. No widow's claim, no inheritance petition, no remarriage. The line ends at the wall. The stones of Poenari are not a fortress. Each block is a deleted family. Each groove in the mortar is a fingerprint from a woman whose name was never recorded, because Vlad made certain there was no one left to record it. The Karitzin manuscript confirms. He destroyed them all, both old and young. Dozens of boyar bloodlines ended at these walls. The paper trail. 300 families attended the Easter feast. The German pamphlet names Vlad, names the city, names the method, but not a single wife, not one child. They were administratively erased before they were physically destroyed. Cross-reference Wallachian land charters from 1460 to 1462. Estates previously held by major boyar families, the Kryeveshti, the Basarab's cadet branches, the Draculeshti rivals, suddenly appear under Vlad's direct control. No inheritance proceedings. No widow's dower claims. No orphan guardianship petitions. In a feudal system where land transfer required parchment stacked to the ceiling, these estates simply changed hands as if the previous owners had never drawn breath. The women did not just die, they ceased to exist in the legal record. Their properties were absorbed into Vlad's domain. Their households were dissolved. Vlad replaced the boyar class with loyal lesser nobles. Kurteni, military service gentry who owed their land, their titles, and their survival entirely to him. Taken together, Poenari's construction looks like the physical phase of a bureaucratic extermination. The marching destroyed the bodies. The labour destroyed the hands. The land charters destroyed the memory. By the time the fortress was finished, there was no documentary evidence that most of these women had ever lived. The boyar wives built Poenari with their bare hands and were erased from every record. Who were the bodies found at the base of the cliff? Romanian oral tradition, collected by folklorists in the 19th century and traced to earlier regional accounts, tells of women throwing themselves from the walls of a fortress above the Argeș River. The drop was 300 meters to the water. The German pamphlets do not mention suicides directly, but they record that many perished during the construction beyond those who died of labor. The cliff at Poenari offers only 2 directions: up, carrying stones, or down. Sometimes the simplest facts are the hardest to sit with. These women wore silk to a dinner party. 3 days later they were hauling limestone up a mountain. Some of them chose the cliff, and we will never know a single one of their names. The boyar wives who survived the construction were not freed. The Karitzin manuscript records no release, no pardon, no restoration. The surviving women were absorbed into Vlad's household as servants, stripped of noble title, stripped of family name, stripped of legal personhood. The women who built the fortress with their bleeding hands became prisoners inside it. From banquet guests wearing Byzantine silk, to labourers carrying limestone, to servants scrubbing the floors they had laid. 3 stages of descent, 3 layers of erasure. Vlad Dracula stood on the completed battlements of Poenari, surveying the Argeș valley below, as a messenger arrived from the south. Ottoman scouts had crossed the Danube, 1462. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, marched north into Wallachia with an army estimated between 60,000 and 90,000 soldiers. Vlad waged a guerrilla campaign of scorched earth and night raids. The Ottomans pushed deeper. Targovishte fell. Vlad retreated to Poenari, the fortress the noble wives built, the walls held. The limestone blocks the boyar women carried up the mountainside on their broken backs deflected Ottoman arrows. The mortar they mixed with burned hands sealed Vlad's garrison against siege. The castle the boyar women razed with their last strength protected the man who destroyed them. Then the stones claimed one more. Romanian tradition records that Vlad's own wife, her identity debated by historians, her death attested in multiple sources, received word that the Ottoman army was closing in. Rather than be captured, she climbed to the highest tower of Poenari and threw herself into the Argeș River below, 300 meters, the same drop, the same river, the fortress that consumed hundreds of noble wives now killed the woman who lived in the rooms they were forced to build. The stones do not distinguish between builder and resident. They take everyone. Vlad watched from the battlements. Then he fled through a secret passage in the mountain. He left the fortress and every ghost inside it behind. Within 14 months, his own ally, King Matthias Corvinus of Hungary, captured him. He spent the next 12 years in a prison cell. Poenari was abandoned. No one maintained the walls the boyar wives had built. Frost split the mortar. Rain dissolved the quicklime. In 1476, Vlad was briefly restored to the Wallachian throne. Within 2 months he was dead, beheaded, his head sent to Sultan Mehmed in Constantinople as proof of death. Preserved in honey, according to later Ottoman accounts. The boyar families Vlad tried to erase. Their descendants returned. Wallachian land charters from the 1480s and 1490s show boyar names reappearing in property registries, but exclusively through distant male line branches, cousins, nephews, collateral heirs. The direct female lines, the wives, the daughters, the mothers who carried stones at Poenari, were gone permanently. No remarriages, few if any surviving children documented in any charter. The bloodline destruction that began at the fortress had been total. In 1888, a landslide sheared away Poenari's northern wall. The 1940 earthquake cracked the main tower. By the mid-20th century, only the curtain walls and partial tower foundations remained. Today, 1,480 concrete steps, installed by Romanian authorities in the 1970s, lead up to what is left. Crumbling walls open to the sky, exposed foundations, mortar that still holds the grooves pressed into it over 5 centuries ago. The women are gone, the records are gone, the bloodlines are gone, the stones remain. No boyar wife's name survives. History's final act of cruelty is always naming. Vlad III is remembered as Dracula, a name that became the most famous monster in Western literature. In 1897, the same decade a major earthquake collapsed Poenari's remaining tower into the Argeș Gorge. An Irish novelist named Bram Stoker published a Gothic horror novel using the name. He had never visited Wallachia. He borrowed the name from a footnote in a library book. Today, millions of people know the word Dracula. It sells novels, films, television series, Halloween costumes, and tourism packages to Transylvania. Not one of those millions knows the name of a single woman who built his fortress. The Romanian government marketed Poenari as a tourist attraction. Visitors climb the 1,480 steps to see Dracula's castle. They take photographs on the battlements. They do not know they are standing on a construction site, where hundreds of noble women laboured until their silk rotted off their bodies, their hands were eaten raw by quicklime, and their names were struck from every record in Wallachia. The fortress is marketed as Gothic romance. The real horror was never supernatural. It was architectural. Every tourist photograph of Poenari may be a photograph of a place where hundreds of women perished, never acknowledged, never memorialised. The next time you hear the name Dracula, remember, the real monster didn't drink blood. Punitive victims carry stones, and the wives of Poenari were not the only noble women in medieval Europe whose destruction was disguised as justice. Across the continent, another ruler turned a queen's execution into public entertainment that redefined the word treason for centuries.